On this episode of the 5P podcast, I'm your host, Michael J. Penney. I'm joined by Sean Jensen. He's the author of Sergeant to CEO, as well as the CEO of Polu Kai Services. Sean has a harrowing story of triumph in the face of adversity. He came out of foster care. He went into the Marine Corps. He took what he learned out of the Marine Corps into business, and now the man is running a multi-billion-dollar contracting firm. You can do it too. Without further ado, Sean Jensen, former sergeant, always Marine, welcome to the 5P podcast.
Thanks, Michael. Not multi-billion, multi-million, but...
Oh, okay. So it's just the contracts that are up in the billion and the company is in the... Oh, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah, that's okay. No,
You're crushing it either way.
No, I'm not Branson or any of those other guys, Trump or whatever, but who knows? Maybe one day.
Absolutely one day.
Yeah.
All right, so you're crushing it, though, with Polu Kai
Yeah.
Services. Let's just dabble on that a little bit before we get into Sergeant to CEO, which is a truly inspiring book. So Polu Kai Services, what is the origins of that real quick?
So Polu Kai Services is basically, Polu Kai is blue and ocean. Services is, when I was thinking about naming the firm, I looked at two things. One, identifying with my native Hawaiian heritage, and the other was putting a company together that didn't confine itself into a box by just saying construction or saying, consulting. Polu Kai encapsulates many different areas of business. So services, was that word. I made it broader. So, our company does engineering, design, build, construction, environmental remediation and cleanup. We do disaster response. We've been on 7 or 8 hurricanes. Personnel in my company have responded to this recent pandemic. We've built COVID labs. We've done disinfectant work in exposed areas where COVID was present. We've done a variety of things throughout the last 18 years of the business. So it's Polu Kai was just a dream that when I was 29, I'd already made a couple owners I'd worked for millionaires, and I didn't see that they reflected back the spirit that I gave them, which was the loyalty and honor and discipline and being successful. And so I just told my wife one day, hey, I'm starting a business. Don't worry, babe, it's going to be all right. And here we are 18 years later. So
excellent. Okay, so this is great right here, though, because people, this is great foreshadowing for why you need to get Sergeant to CEO, which is available on Amazon. And I want you to know, I hope that this encapsulates the problem opportunity which you're facing out there, the enemy situation, for folks who are familiar with our 5P format. In one of my darker hours, when I was feeling real low, I typed in U.S. Marine sergeants who became CEOs of organizations. Your book popped up.
it's awesome.
And hugely inspiring for where I was at and what I was trying to do as a Marine who had transitioned out 4 or 5 years earlier and was trying to make a go of this. And you have such a great impact on folks. When you originally created the book, was this the problem opportunity that you were facing? Was that the enemy situation that you saw out there? Or did you make it hard?
It's interesting you say that, because when I transitioned out without much in the way of a guidebook or any kind of assistance. I went to the 2-day TAPS class, and here's a generic resume. They bring some dude in there with civilian clothes on, and this is what it looks like to dress normal. And quite frankly, it was appalling. I mean, I had been planning, for a year and a half prior. I understood that, after my 6 years active service was up, that I was going to move on. And, I was even offered an opportunity to go to MECEPS, and I turned that down to be a civilian. because I just felt like I had a bigger mission in life. I just felt like I had, I don't know if you want to call it prophetic, but I just knew that I knew I was smart. I knew I was capable. I knew I had a don't quit attitude and a work ethic that would take me places. And it takes a lot of faith to leave something that has sheltered you from in your early years of life. You know, we joined the military, most of us joined the military 17, 18. In my case, I had my parents sign me up at 17, and we joined the military to find ourselves, I think. At least certainly I did. You know, my background that I talk about in the book was being abandoned at 6 and being a foster kid and going through abuse and multiple parents and a broken home. And then, you know, at 8 years old, I get adopted, and I tell myself that I want to be two things in life. I want to be G.I. Joe and president of something. Now, I mean, who thinks of that at 8 years old? But
That's
that was in my mindset. That was in my mindset. And I always felt like people were holding me back. You know, I mean, I was one of those kids that wanted to grow up so fast. I wanted to be able to take charge of my life. I felt like I really, you know, I was being developed, and don't get me wrong, I was treated well in, you know, my adopted home. But at 15, I left home and basically ran away. I worked multiple jobs. I still attended school, and I rented a room. And then I came back home when I was 17 to get my parents to sign me up for the Marine Corps. And from there, I just told myself that I'm going to go find my way. So thinking about that, when as a CEO over the years, as I was writing what was going to be more of a memoir to my family, it was actually, it was another veteran who read my book and said, "Sean, you got to publish this." And I'm like, "Come on." They're like, no. We need to get you an editor. We need to get you somebody to help you out with this. I mean, you know, you write like you talk, which is great. You know, so I wrote the book, but you know, obviously I had an editor and stuff, but I think what it addressed at my time, I was seeing really high unemployment coming back from Iraq and Afghanistan wars. I participated at the time with the Wounded Warrior Project, and one of the veterans came in. It was, I'll never forget, it was a Lance Corporal. His whole convoy was blown up. He was lost. You know, he couldn't barely make the, you know, rent. Just everything in his life was going wrong. And I remember sitting down in my office and, you know, just talking to him, you know, Marine to Marine. And, you know, his story, as heart-wrenching as it was, you know, they didn't have the money to go ahead and buy the construction, you know, equipment he needed. So, you know, of course, first thing I did is I advanced him, you know, a couple paychecks and got him on board. And I gave him a Vietnam veteran that was in my company as a mentor to work with every day. And this guy was with the was 7th Cav in Vietnam. He was, you know, he was in some serious stuff. And so what I did is I paired him up, you know, with a veteran who had been there, and he did really well, ended up getting a job at the Pentagon full time and leaving us. And he never had to pay back $1 on that loan. So my heart was happy. I got to see this guy succeed. And, you know, and that's so starting a CEO is kind of me talking to all the veterans out there, all the foster kids out there, all the adopted kids, all the people that have felt lost, to say, hey, you know, look, this high school diploma Marine sergeant, you know, can get out, start at the bottom, shoveling ditches, and learn every trade above him, and then end up leading a multi-million-dollar company and doing $1,600 on his back porch with a wife going, "You better make it."
And people, you need to read Sean Jensen's book. I'm serious. You've heard me say this before. I believe that Sergeant to CEO might even be worthy for the Commandant's reading list. And I'm serious. There's a whole lot of courage, strength, and hope in this. This is something to where Sean Jensen takes the time to lay out what took place in his life and does so from a genuine, vulnerable standpoint. And what I love about it, as we're progressing through, because we're talking about how you execute with Polu Kai, but this is Sean Jensen, Sergeant to CEO, author, potentially going through, dare I say it, some of those tumultuous times where things got a little shaky down the business trail, didn't it? I mean, there were some losses in the past, and you rebounded out of that.
Oh,
and you
yeah.
put it in those pages.
Yeah. So, yeah, it is a very up and down business. Entrepreneurs, you are probably have to be, you have to be a resilient person really to be an entrepreneur, and you have to be dead set on getting to your end goal or mission. You got to have. So when I started Sergeant CEO, or I started Polu Kai, I laid out a plan. I wrote a small business plan. I'd never written a small business plan in my life, but I wrote one. And I said, here is what I'm going to do. I'm going to sell my individual services at first. So I took my technical skills and I, sold that part of it. And then I basically just, sketched out a plan. Here's the situation. Here's where I want to go. How am I going to get there from point A to point B? And so you need a plan. You need to write a plan. You have to do it. I mean, I'm a firm believer in that, because if you're not thinking over the horizon, then you shouldn't be in this, because being an entrepreneur and being successful is not just day to day. It's committing to getting to that destination and then having a plan after you get to that destination to move to the next level. So, in my mind, my first year of business, I did $13,000. The next year in business, I did $283,000. The next year after that, I did $2.1 million. And then you can see this progression. Well, that just didn't happen overnight. You need to bring allies in. You need to coordinate with other small businesses. You need to build relationships and friendships. And then when you do get the opportunity, you got to perform. And so what I did is I took these very small jobs in the beginning, like $10, $12, $20,000, when I would add that to my portfolio. So it would sound great, right? But, it sounds like, well, geez, that's a small job. But those small jobs led to the medium-sized jobs, which went to the larger size jobs when you're eventually knocking down $10 million jobs, or in our case, winning a $2 billion 8-year contract over at the National Institutes of Health. I mean, huge. People don't see that. It's in the middle. So, I mean, it's a lot of hard work. It's a lot of grit. And back in 2011, I remember waking up and losing everything. I mean, I had a job, the VA hospital in Miami. The job went horribly wrong. My primary subcontractor that was doing the job basically went bankrupt. And then after I went to get the bond, to go after the bond, which is their security to hire people to do it, they went bankrupt. So then I was held responsible for the whole project. I ended up having to spend $3 million to fix this thing. And then, so my books went negative. And, so I sat down with all my leaders. I said, hey, this isn't looking good right now. We sat down, we developed a plan. We said, where can we cut? What can we do? We had existing work. So all those profits from that existing work were now being directed at cleaning up the mess that was created. And it wasn't my fault that the situation, took the turn it was. I did everything by the book. I hired a good subcontractor. I made sure that they had the insurances, the bonds. But sometimes you can do everything right and still be hit by a tidal wave. And so how you react and how you do that, you just have to take small bites out of the apple in those cases. And I went out and I didn't lie to anybody about it. I called my bankers. I told my insurance companies that, hey, I'm about to get wiped out, but I need you to back me. And they did, because I was honest with it. I mean, so, in some cases I had to finance some of the debt over, a multi-year period to get it done. But I just have a theory that, that in business, it's inevitable that you're going to get hit by a tidal wave. And in my mind, there was two things that saved me from that. One, I treated my business like a business. I didn't, just because money was in the bank, I didn't steal it from myself. I made sure that it was there to operate the business. I paid myself a very reasonable wage. So in times of crisis, there would be something to assist me in getting that problem solved. Two, I never took on a project that was bigger than my company. For instance, that was like a third of my company. So we average about 20 million a year now. But back then, I think we were at like 40. And I always made sure that I didn't take a project that could wipe out my whole organization. Be smart about, what you attack, right? So I always like to say that the Marine Corps is a lot smarter. We don't directly run at the machine gun nest now. We call in artillery, airstrikes, and
Right.
we find a better route, right? So I kind of applied those Marine Corps thought processes in business where, sometimes you have to take the direct approach, but, sometimes to get to your objective, you're going to have to skip some islands, and make sure you don't get trapped or bogged down. So what I try to do as a leader is, avoid those islands where I'm going to get entrapped. So
Right.
Matt, you're sitting over here where you've got this big mess of a conflict going on, but at the same time, you got to keep balance with the rest of your business and make sure that they stay on that path. And we got through it. It took a while, but it was a painful memory, and the book discusses that, and I kind of write it in a sort of in a third person way where I'm talking to you and narrating my story, kind of like, I think there's a few witty things in there like, oh, not this,
Absolutely. I caught myself
Yeah.
laughing out loud while reading through
Right.
some of the different pages. And I caught myself with a tear in my eye reading through some of the different pages that are in there. Folks, check out Sergeant to CEO by Sean Jensen. Seriously, it's a genuine tale. So,
No, I enjoyed it. And, like I said, it's not a New York Times bestseller, but, when I was out in Yuma, Arizona with the Marines of the ball last year, and having these young troops coming up to me and be like, I read your book. And I'm like, oh, thanks, Lance Corporal. I appreciate that. He's like, I said, well, how'd you find out about it? He goes, my sergeant gave it to me. He said, listen, I know you're not staying in the Marine Corps, but you've got to read this book. And I think it's kind of flowed into the other branches too. I got you got reviews from the Navy and the Air Force and Coast Guard and all kinds of people. It's quite interesting. The book, it's not a war story in the traditional sense where, I don't get the Medal of Honor at the end, but I get to keep my business, and I get my employees, and I get to keep going and going on to bigger things. So the book itself takes you up to about, I think, maybe 2013, 2014, something like that. It's been out for 5 years now. A lot has happened in those 5 years now.
right.
I have been scribbling. I ain't gonna lie. I've been scribbling.
Good.
And there when the time is right, there'll be another book out there. But we've enjoyed some phenomenal success. It's crazy. The people I have that work with me are so wonderful. They're so dedicated. My turnover is extremely low. I've got my own fire team as a company, where they work, they cooperate. I take care of them, they take care of me, and it's a great organization.
Heck yeah. Folks, you got to check out Sergeant to CEO. You got to check out Sean Jensen. Be sure to take a good long look at what he is saying inside of these pages, whether it's good orderly direction or something else. He is talking about non-commissioned officers, those folks who don't have degrees, being able to walk out of the military and do certain things based on their own gumption and the guidance and mentorship that they can find and seek along the way. What's so great about this, in hearing your lessons of leadership, is knowing that you're talking to essentially the tactical sergeant, right? Because not every non-commissioned officer is built equal, and we get that. However, if you're a leader in the non-commissioned officer ranks, and you actually care about what you're doing and you're pushing out there, you are the backbone of the military. You are the ones who are carrying out the plan of the day. It is not the generals who are doing the work in the trenches. So how we centralize our planning and delegate our authority out there to individuals whom we trust, who can carry out that plan of the day. And who do you seek as far as that's concerned, who has that built up heart that's in there? You can pull takeaways out of Sergeant to CEO by Sean Jensen. Please be sure to pick up a copy of this book. So as we're going through on this, I want to ask, how can people connect with you personally? Are you approachable, let's say, on LinkedIn?
Yeah, no, people message me all the time through my Sergeant to CEO Facebook page.
Okay.
People talk to me all the time on LinkedIn. You know, I have to manage my time carefully.
Right.
But if I don't respond right away, I get back to people. I think it's important to be approachable. I mean, I haven't hit Kim Kardashian world fame status yet.
I don't have the booty, so.
Sorry, but no, I'm just saying though. But I think it's important because, I learn a lot from people. I'm an observer. I'm watching people. I've watched comments that are posted on my page, and these times where there's so much diversity and there's so much differing views and opinions, and I ain't gonna lie, I have my my views as well. But what I see is that something I didn't see when I came out of the Marine Corps 22 years ago. What I see now is that the veterans are really stepping up and they're leading. And, and I talk about this in my book a little bit. The Vietnam veterans out there, when I came out of the service, for whatever reason, saw something in me and the Vietnam veterans in business and adopted. Like, you're going to be our guy. You're going to be a leader. We're going to show you how to do this on the outside. And I will tell you, it is, one's an undersecretary of defense, retired now. One was a combat colonel in Vietnam. The guy that gave me my first government contract was a LERP, Army LERP in Vietnam, who adopted me, who I later helped him out as he exited the government. So it's interesting now that you see there's so many veterans out there, doing good things. I remember when George Bush, President Bush signed the Veterans First Act, and finally there was a vehicle where the VA was actually being told, hey, we want you to use veteran-owned companies. They'll do a better job. And that said a lot to me. That spoke to me because I've taken care of veteran cemeteries around the country. I'm currently on a large contract to take care of VA cemetery sites across the Northeast. I've worked in almost 24 VA medical centers where I've rebuilt emergency rooms or provided new spaces or things like that. It's so amazing. And then they find out you're a veteran-owned business, and they're like, well, this guy's going to do a good job because he understands what the mission is here, which is to take veterans. So, there are plenty of good veteran companies coming out now in business, and lots of entrepreneurs. And I like to think veterans are pretty intrepid people. The average civilian isn't jumping off a mountain every day or out of a helicopter or an airplane, or running into combat. So, it seems like we have a little bit more resilience to stress or pressure. In our business, you have to stay calm. It would have been really easy to flip out when I saw that $3 million loss, which probably ended up being far greater than that. I'll never know the true number because I think about all the profits from all the other jobs that went into,
right,
preparing that, which we did. But veterans are resilient people, and I think also, there's a lot of survivors from broken homes as well that are pretty resilient people too. You always hear stories of those foster kids who were beaten, that didn't make it, and there were orphanages. One of the great messages I got early on in introducing Sergeant to CEO was that my book went out to long-term care orphanage in Ohio, and 6 of those kids that read my book joined the military. You know, I don't really talk about that stuff on my page, but to me, I feel like if you can inspire just one person, then everything that we do is worth it. So I realize that there's a lot of eyes on me, and while I don't prefer to be a public figure, I do feel like there's a sense of hey, you know, those Vietnam veterans talk to me again. And when you get there, you need to do what we told you. You know, go out there and share your story so that other people may take up the mantle while you're gone. And
there you go.
There'll be a day where eventually I will probably hang it up.
Right.
I feel like I've been working my whole life, you know. I've been mowing lawns since I was 8 and catching snakes to building buildings to, you know, you name it. So it's strange. Polu Kai has always been bigger than me. And I think that's something that, you know, in the military, that's ingrained to us, right? This is bigger than me. You know, I'm here to serve for everyone and not me. And I think if you have that kind of mindset, people see that and they understand that you're a team player and that you really do care about their success as well, you know.
Amen. Folks, look up Sean Jensen right now. Check out Sergeant to CEO. Here's what I can say about Mr. Sean Jensen. If you are out there and you are trying, you're making an effort diligently, that man will give you the time of day. If you are going out there and you are trying under your own steam to do everything that you can in order to push that ball forward, whatever your mission is, Sean will give you the time of day.
Because you may not like what I hear sometimes, but though, I will give you straight up truth. If you're doing something that's crazy, I'm gonna tell you it's crazy. You know, I think the key to any success in business is one of the absolute first questions you have to ask yourself, does it make sense? You know, the second question is this sustainable, or is this just a niche thing that's going to go by the wayside?
Yeah.
And I think if you're out there and you're pushing that ball and you borrowed all that money from your family and you've exhausted everything and you still haven't gotten to where you're at, yeah, it might be time to start doing your day job again.
Right. Well, and I bounced 5P off of you when it was in its infancy. Before this thing was a book and just on Notepad, I was bouncing that off of you when I was still working at Bunker. I mean, my goodness. We were talking like, yeah.
I thought it was a great idea. I've always talked about SMEAC, you know. I always I use those acronyms, you know, and I tell people about it: situation, mission, execution, administration, command, control, logistics. I mean, you know, I understand it thoroughly. It's ingrained into my head. But at the same time, you know, when you talk about that stuff, there's so many parables, you know, that you can relate to the military, to the outside world. And I think, you know, it's indoctrined or it's ingrained in what I do. I don't have an MBA. I didn't, you know, everything I learned is through experience or specialized education and making mistakes. You know, you're going to make mistakes. I make mistakes, but you know, Sergeant CEO was really just kind of directed at, you know, to talking with veterans. I've had moms and dads contact my page and say, you know, my son's going through a bad time. He can't seem to get his act together. You know, do you have any advice? And, you know, and I'll chat with them. You know, I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a doctor, but I promise you, as a sergeant, I've done more psychology work than most people will ever freaking do.
There you go. Yes.
You know, having that Lance Corporal in Okinawa who wants to go back home to kill the plumber that's, you know, doing whatever, not saying anything, but, you know. So you run into these situations, and I think the military gives you a really good development. It was like a young staff sergeant told me when I was a Lance Coolie. He said, you got 2 choices. You can work for the Marine Corps, or you can make the Marine Corps work for you. And by that meaning, he said, you know, if you come out here and do your job, you're going to learn. At the same time, you're going to be earning that paycheck, but you will be recognized for that effort. And while that effort may not be immediately recognized in the field or in your job, you come to think about it later in your career when you see similar situations, and you're able to go, yeah, I remember something like that. And then all of a sudden the solution pops in your head. I tell my people all the time, you come to me with a problem, you better have 3 solutions, because otherwise I'm doing your job.
Right.
I don't want to do your job. I've already done that job.
Right. I hired you for a reason.
Yeah. I'm glad I guide you to help you, support you, give you the tools you need, but you're not going to be an effective CEO if all you do is sit behind a desk and do everybody else's job. You've got to delegate, you've got to coordinate and provide support. I think about, in my company, I think of, like, we have a logistics side, we have an administrative side, which is the contracts and proposals side, we have an accounting side, we have all these different things that supports the superintendent in the field. Now, what does that sound like to you?
Right. It sounds like the NCO to me.
Everything is about supporting the grunt in the field and giving them everything they need to do their job correctly. And if they have the tools they need, we're an unstoppable force. That breaks down, when any one of those sections breaks down, that's when you lose. So, I have a great, executive vice president. She is a CPA, smart as a whip, sees the problem, because a lot of problems in business, you think it's that traditional project problem on the job site. They don't initially show up right away. If you got a long-term project that's a year long, 2 years long, it shows up in accounting. So, we project out how much a job is going to bill each month. And then when we don't hit those marks, and if there's a substantial thing, we question, we have a meeting, we go, what's going on here? What happened that we didn't hit our target and our goal? And then we attack the problem. We figure it out. Maybe a subcontractor is not coming to work, or maybe there's a delay in equipment getting from a job site. We have to know that information so that we can manage the situation, so we can tell the client, hey, we've got a hiccup. We've got something going on here. Now, there's no construction job that I've ever seen that's been perfect. Not in my career.
Right.
But
time and budget is the usual, but we deal with the constraints that we've got that are in front of us. So here's the thing, folks. We're talking with Sean Jensen. He's the founder of Polu Kai Services. He's the author of Sergeant to CEO. And we're going to start wrapping some things up here, people. So if you're not already familiar, be sure to join the 5P Inner Circle, where you have this full long-form interview entirely interrupted. Go to 5paragraph.com, join the 5P Inner Circle. You can get this full interview. I got to ask you a curveball question. All right. And you kind of highlighted it already in the book, but what has been the most humbling moment for you since being a business leader, since leaving the military and doing all of this? Is it Miami? Is it, yeah.
There's so many. I'm still pretty attached to running my last PFT at Quantico at Smedley D. Butler Stadium, and then being asked to rebuild it. So, General Smedley Butler Stadium in Quantico is the football stadium. I ran my last PFT out there as a sergeant, and I came back as a CEO and rebuilt the stadium that was hand-built by Marines in the 1900s, and sitting next to the base commander, colonel, and cutting that ribbon to open it up. And that was a prophetic honor for me. But there are moments where I think about where I was in Hurricane Katrina, working with FEMA and the Army Corps, and coming up to a house that was completely destroyed and seeing a woman sweeping the porch off and asking for a blue roof. And
Right.
Just remember holding her, and she was crying, and I said, this is beyond our control.
Right.
And being able to just sit there and talk to her for 30 minutes or 40 minutes and just listen to their story. There's so many things, I'm one of those lead from the front guys. So it's not unusual to see me out on a job site. I might be running a backhoe or an excavator, which sends my people batty kind of, because they're like, you don't need to be out here doing that. But I do believe that, leadership isn't, really necessarily behind a desk in a chair. It's being out there, during this pandemic. I got 75 full-time employees, and being able to communicate to them and lead them and give them security and safety in their workplace and being there. I think that's just such a unique thing that veterans bring to the table, because we're all about protecting our families, and I consider my people our family, my family. And I think that goes a long way just in life and business. If you're just, be a genuine person, just do the right thing. Even if people aren't watching, doing the right thing it's a full-time job, not a part-time job.
Yeah, if you're willing to do it by any means, are you willing to do it by the right way?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Well, Sean, I am absolutely blessed to have you on the 5P podcast. I am so happy that you joined us here. You have been a huge inspiration and continue to be a huge inspiration. And I mean that from the bottom of my heart.
Well, thanks, brother. I appreciate that, man.
Yes, sir.
5 for you on that one, man.
Hoorah. There it is, folks. This is why you listen to every episode of the 5P podcast. This is why you hit subscribe on the YouTube channel and ring the bell to get the notifications on every new release. This is why you go to 5paragraph.com. Right now, you get a copy of the 5P, the 5-paragraph business plan, the action-oriented business management tool for leaders. This is why you join the 5P Inner Circle. This is why you're a part of our mastermind group, because we've got awesome people like Sean Jensen within our network. He is a fantastic individual. Folks, if you have not already done so, please subscribe, rate, review the podcast. Do so immediately. And be sure to check out Sean Jensen at Sergeant to CEO. You can primarily go through the Facebook page on there, but look up Sean Jensen, Sergeant to CEO. He's also available on LinkedIn if you would like to connect with him over there. But please take a look at Sergeant to CEO. It is well worth your time reading that book cover to cover, and I would highly recommend it. Matter of fact, I've got my copy rented out to another Marine right now. So there you go. That's how it works. Sean, thank
Michael.
you so much.
Appreciate it, man. All the best to you.
Thank you. Folks, thanks for joining us on another episode of the 5P podcast. Until next time, take care and be well.